right, welcome to Chasing Rings, everyone. What's going on, my friend?
How are you today, my friend? I'm blessed.
I'm good. It's a little bit gloomy. Spring teased us a little bit. It's a little cool up here today, but not too bad. Should be nice for Easter weekend. We're missing G today. He wasn't able to join us, but we are going to keep it moving nonetheless. And as we always do, let's get started with Wait What? What do you have for me today, big dude?
Well, we are covering today the AFC South. And just quickly, the running back for Indianapolis, Jonathan Taylor. We all know he went to Wisconsin, but did you know that he was also recruited by Ivy Leagues, Harvard and Yale as well?
Wait, what? Really? Well, that speaks to his academics then, right? I love that. I love that.
Yes, it does. It's good to hear. South Jersey guy and getting a different type of profile. Very good.
Yeah, he seems like a good kid, man. Pretty quiet, just does his job. All right. My wait what for today is, did you know, and I'm sticking with the AFC South theme, did you know that the AFC South is the only division in the NFL with more than one team that has never made it to the Super Bowl? Wait, what?
Didn't think about that. Close but no cigar in a few of them, right? Or
never would have thought about that. But yep,
no.
The only division with more than one team that hasn't made it. And I started going through the divisions in my head. Yeah, a lot of divisions. I know, like your division, NFC East, everybody's gone and won multiple.
Right.
So, some of us are just stragglers waiting for our shot at it. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting tidbit.
Wow. So Jacksonville and Houston never went.
Yep, Jacksonville and Houston. Both haven't been close, as we know, multiple times. We could go back to the Houston Oilers in their battles with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we all remember I shouldn't say we all, at least us Gen Xers remember the Renfro controversial catch in the end zone that was called a no catch. It didn't have instant replay at that time, but it was clearly a catch.
It was bad.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. And
Renfro
Jacksonville certainly
he was in.
And Jacksonville certainly had its moments, had its opportunities where they, were the one seeds and underperformed in the playoffs. So that is it for our wait, what? Let's jump into some news. Believe it or not, and we were talking about the ABS rule in baseball, could challenge balls and strikes. We had our first challenge walk-off last night in the Baltimore Texas game. So Baltimore won the game 8-3, but they actually challenged a ball call and they reviewed it and they called it a strikeout. So it was the first ABS challenge walk-off. Baltimore over Texas. That might win you a pizza one day. In other news, our boy Kirk Cousins, whoever his agent is, I applaud him because he's doing a heck of a job continuing to get him contract. So he is set to join Las Vegas, which is great when you think about, we're talking about the draft and everyone is pretty much in agreement, even though I threw a little doubt out there in our last episode. I think we're all pretty much in agreement that Mendoza will be the first pick. That will be a great landing spot, actually, if Cousins can start the season for the Raiders and Mendoza could learn a little bit. That actually would be a really good transition. In our next tidbit, Audie Crooks. She is in the transfer portal, people. She has a year of eligibility left, and she has joined the transfer portal. Audie's averaging almost 26 points, seven rebounds, 65% from the field. But get this, big dude. She is one of 10 players from Iowa State that jumped into the portal.
One of 10?
One of 10. So there is something going on in Iowa State. But I guess we'll find out in the offseason what the deal was with that. But you're losing essentially your whole team to the transfer portal. And last, before we jump into our AFC South, Final Four obviously is this weekend, one of the biggest weekends in sport. But let's start with the women. So in our first game, we have South Carolina and Connecticut. And that's a rematch of the 2025 title game, if you all remember, where UConn absolutely destroyed South Carolina 82-59. It was never a contest. Going into this game, the Huskies are on a 54-game win streak. As we know, they're undefeated this year, but they're a 54-game winning streak that extends from last year, largely driven by a dominant defense and, of course, sophomore Sarah Strong. If you haven't checked her out, she is the real deal. You might see her on a lot of commercials these days. She's getting a lot of endorsements, so good for her. And, of course, we have senior AZ Fudd, who's looking to go out with another championship, who provides some elite outside shooting for them. South Carolina, on the other side, obviously their motivation is going to be revenge. As much as coaches and players try to downplay the revenge factor, when you get beat that badly the year before and you get an opportunity to right that, that's got to be in the back of your mind. So I'm thinking that'll definitely be a motivator for South Carolina. What they're going to try to do is leverage their size to neutralize UConn's momentum. South Carolina is excellent on the boards, and they're good in three-point shooting percentage. So some of the keys to this game is really going to be rebounds and turnovers. Who can win those battles? And an important matchup is going to be Joyce Edwards versus Sarah Strong down in the post. If, maybe one can get the other in foul trouble, how they defend each other is going to be crucially important. In that game, big dude, who do you think is coming out of that South Carolina UConn game?
Well, I mean, weirder things have happened, but 54 in a row is hard to contend with. I think South Carolina is going to give them everything they have. And, of course, with the women's game, and I wonder when that's going to happen with the men's game, I think the fact that they play by quarters, it helps them break up the way the game's going to be played and the momentum and where it's going to shift at is going to be different. So if South Carolina can come out with a good third quarter, they can contest them as much as they can. I think UConn hangs on for this one, though, for the win.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with you. South Carolina definitely needs to keep it close. And UConn's last couple of games have been a little bit more competitive than the first two rounds, but still easily winning these games. So South Carolina needs to keep this close for sure. And I agree with you. UConn, I think, wins this one. The next game, the nightcap in the women's Final Four, is Texas versus UCLA. Texas is on a 12-game winning streak. They got really hot at the end of the year, but they've only lost 3 times. So not like they weren't hot for most of the year, but they certainly ended the year on a nice note. UCLA has won 29 straight. Oof. And they are 35-1, and their only loss was to Texas the day before Thanksgiving. So this is another maybe little revenge variable that might exist there. Texas is, of course, led by Madison Booker, just dominant year. She's taken her game to a whole new level. And I love their point guard, Rory Harmon. She's a veteran point guard, controls the show for them, a lot of energy. So I'm looking for them to play well tomorrow night. But Texas reached the Final Four with an average margin of victory of 35 points. So they have been steamrolling people. And they just absolutely destroyed Michigan in the Elite Eight, 77-41. And a lot of people had Michigan coming out of that bracket. So that was really impressive, their run so far. Texas's hallmark is intense defense. They D you up. So it's going to be very interesting moving into UCLA, who's making its second consecutive Final Four appearance. Lauren Betts, their center, 6'7", presents a significant problem on the defensive end for Texas. One of the things that I think is going to be something for us to look out in this game is Lauren Betts perhaps did not play her best in the Final Four last year. She's a senior now. I'm sure she's looking to go out and have a strong performance. They have a really good half-court game that's predicated on her as the centerpiece, kind of old-school basketball. But she has some great guards in Kiki Rice and Charlize Leger-Walker. But the big thing here is Texas going to be able to hold Betts, and can UCLA handle Texas's pressure on defense? So it'll be real interesting how they decide to play her. Are they going to double? They're going to let her go one-on-one. I think if they let her go one-on-one, they're going to get killed. But what are your thoughts on UCLA and Texas? Two hot teams, another rematch. Who are you picking in this one, big dude?
Well, it sounds like you laid it out pretty good. What I've noticed about UCLA when they have to be, and it's going to be interesting if they could do with Texas, UCLA knows how to be dominant, but they also know how to be gritty. That's what I like about Betts. Betts has developed a mid-range this year that she didn't have before. Really has upped her game and is a different player. And I think she's going to make the difference. And I want to take, believe it or not, UCLA probably not in a strange game, but in a very close game. And I think Betts makes the difference. But I think the person that may put them over the top is somebody we haven't heard as much from. That it's their turn to win the game. I'm going to take UCLA in a close one.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you on that as well. And of course, I picked UCLA to win it all. You mentioned something that was really important with regards to UCLA before we move into the men's Final Four. UCLA's grittiness. I think that's what they lacked last year. They weren't tough. When somebody punched them in the mouth, they did not respond very well. And I think that'll be the difference for them this year. So 2 great games in the women's Final Four. Can't wait. Certainly have our eyes glued on that tomorrow night. Moving into the men's, our first game up on Saturday evening is UConn versus Illinois. So UConn's actually been there. This is their 3rd Final Four in the last 4 years. They have 2 titles. They rely on a stifling defense and a dominant post game, which has really exploded. Terrence Reed Jr. has been phenomenal this tournament. He had 31 and 27 against Furman. That's the first time in 58 years anybody put a 30-25 up in the tourney. And he had 27 approximately and 4 blocks against Duke. And really, I think he was the reason that they escaped that Duke game because of the decisions he made on offense when Connecticut ran some really nice sets. He made some great decisions out of the sets to either get his shot or to make the appropriate pass to make easy scoring opportunities for his teammates. So I thought he was spectacular. For the Illini, they're definitely one of the hottest teams coming into this, and they are big, man. I don't know if you watch them. They have some big kids. They have an explosive offense, but defense has kind of been their Achilles, but they've improved in that. They've played very well on defense in the tournament thus far. They can beat you with scoring. That's kind of their thing, but they can also kill you on the boards. And that's kind of what beat Iowa, even though Iowa was very impressive at keeping that close. Just couldn't win that rebound game. But the focus in this one is UConn going to be able to challenge Illinois' offensive efficiency? UConn's known for being stifling on defense, but I haven't really seen anybody slow the Illini down offensively this year. They're very physical, so Reed is going to probably have to have another one of those 30-25 type games. But especially on defense, he needs to have a little bit more of a presence. So he needs to stay out of foul trouble. That's going to be crucial because the Illini can throw big bodies at you. So their defense is going to have to really lock in. And for me, one of the things I want to throw in there is UConn has to be efficient on offense. They started to get a rhythm at the end of the Duke game, but the reason they were out of that game for the entirety of it was because they were not efficient on offense. They were terrible. And that's the thing that scared me about them all year. They go in these droughts where they don't score for blocks of time, and then they end up having to come back. So, big dude, the Illini versus the veteran Huskies.
Wow.
That's a tough one. I know that's a tough game.
Yeah. Well, the Illini, and they seem very, very confident. They've been playing with a lot of confidence, and they're starting to actually voice how much they believe that they belong. They know and they understand that, and they're going to give them everything they are. I think UConn, with them being gritty and understanding what's going on, and their veterans, I think is going to be valuable in the game. I think Illinois actually will carry the lead for most of the game. But I think once again, UConn finds a way to get it done to go into the finals on Monday.
Yeah, we're in total agreement so far. I don't know how UConn's going to win this game, but I just think they're going to find a way. They seem to find a way. I think the coaching difference, and I have a lot of respect for the Illini program, tremendous coaching staff, but there's just something about Hurley in March that wills this team. He makes the right decisions. And I think UConn's going to find a way to upset the Illini and get to the championship game. And moving into our nightcap, have your favorite snack on board for this because this is going to be good stuff right here. Arizona and Michigan. Arizona is probably the most balanced team in the country. They rank in the top 10 on both sides of the ball, offensively and defensively. They're dominant inside. They're good at the free throw line. They deep scoring options. I mean, they can get you from anywhere, and they have this switch that Michigan also has. So I'm like, who is going to win that battle of when they really need to dig deep? If there's some adversity, who's going to be able to flip that switch the quickest? Moving into Michigan, they have a top-ranked defense, a really big front court. They've been killing and bruising teams throughout this tournament. Explosive offense. The display that they put on in the Elite Eight was just absolutely ridiculous. 90 points in multiple games in the tournament. This is basically a battle of efficiency. These are two well-coached teams, very disciplined teams. They're both dominant on both sides, but Michigan's defense is probably their strength. But Arizona can score at will. So that's going to be the tug of war right there, right? Does the same rule apply that applies to most sports? Does defense beat good offense? Big dude, talk to me.
Wow. This is going to be a head knocker all the way through. Battle of the Titans. I'm sure it'll be a classic game. Gosh, I don't know a whole lot about their strategies, but I probably watched Michigan more than Arizona. I've seen Arizona not have a whole lot of trouble. I've seen Michigan kind of swing through some of the trouble. So, to tell you the truth, though, I would probably be backing Michigan for the game, but I think Arizona may ultimately win that battle.
I am in agreement with you. I am definitely rooting for Michigan, but I think Arizona is going to have too much for them. What this may come down to is if anyone gets in foul trouble, because they both have pretty good size, and if you can get some of these big guys in foul trouble, especially if Michigan's guys get into foul trouble with Arizona being so good on offense, that would make their offensive flow even easier. So, all right, so we're in agreement on both of these games. So let's back up to the women for a minute. So we have UConn versus UCLA. Who you picking to cut down the next, big dude, for the women?
I'll tell you what, I want to take UCLA, and it's going to be one of those games again. I think that UConn, this will be the one time where if they keep, and I'm just one of those people, when I hear people keep mentioning records and all those other things, anybody that I've backed is going down. This is more of just a gut feeling. I think this might be the Bet sisters, correct? I think this is their year.
Yeah, I'm with you again. Like I said, I picked UCLA in my original bracket to win it all. But, man, I feel weird going against UConn because of the history. This team looks so dominant. But the last couple of games, I did see some quarters where they looked vulnerable. Mm-hmm. Like they had a hard time scoring in a couple of different games. And I'm interested to see if that happens again, how will they respond at this level? Because while they do have some veterans, they do have some youth on this team that probably hasn't dealt with adversity up to this point if you won 54 games in a row. So, and won the national championship last year. So I'm going to be interested to see what happens if they have any of those droughts, but I'm with you. I'm going to take UCLA to upset UConn. And in the men, we both have Arizona and the men Huskies also appearing in a title game. Who you going with there?
I'd like Connecticut to win. I just don't know that they're going to be able to get it done. So I think Arizona is playing not only good basketball, they're playing consistent, efficient, and I think that Connecticut can't afford to even get down by 10 points. I just think Arizona is the best team this year.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Nothing else to add. Total agreement.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that's our March Madness. We'll see how that turns out over the next few days here. Certainly our next episode will be after both games have been played, so we'll be able to see how our picks panned out and discuss those games a little bit. Let's hop into our draft outlook for the AFC South. Coming down the home stretch now, we have one more division left after this, and then we can really start delving into some of the draft prospects, and we'll leave you all with our mock drafts and see how we fare with that. Houston, let's start with Houston. All right, so the Texans, another good year, slow start for them, but for the last 3 seasons, believe it or not, the Texans have won at least one playoff game, so that's great for their franchise. D'Amico Ryans has just done a tremendous job turning that team around. They've done well through the draft. I mean, they have one of the best defenses in football as a result of the draft and some key free agency moves over the past few years. But one of the things that seems to catch up with Houston at some point, their lack of consistency seems to bite them when it counts the most. And this year, it kind of bit them, in the playoffs, certainly. C.J. Stroud didn't have a good game in any of the playoff games that they appeared in. Luckily, they were able to escape Pittsburgh because Pittsburgh's offense was also anemic, so the defense was able to do enough to get them out of that one. But they weren't going to be able to fare so well against the Pats, and we saw how that turned out. A big thing for them going into this next year is, where is C.J. Stroud's head going into this year, and where's the franchise in terms of their confidence in him? That New England game really was telling in terms of where he is right now. He got sacked 3 times. He had what some people are calling 4 of the worst interceptions you'll ever see for a team that, had one of the arguably best defenses in football. So if he can step his game up, Houston is right there. I expect him to be back there again. I do expect him to bounce back. Like the kid a lot, liked him at Ohio State. Loved the pick when Houston drafted him. So for Houston and its fans, the big thing is, can C.J. Stroud elevate his game enough so that Houston can stop knocking on the door and finally kick it in, as Bum Phillips used to say back in the day. I know you remember that, big dude. So basically the storyline for them is, can C.J. Stroud get it done? The defense, we don't even need to talk about that. They were high in pretty much every category. They were the top-ranked total defense. On offense is where they struggled, though. They did have some injuries in the running game. They ranked in at 22nd against the run. But I think Woody Marks came along really well at the end of the year, so I think they do have a solidified running game. They picked up David Montgomery from the Lions in the offseason, so they have their tandem. I think they're good there. I think that 22nd ranking in rushing will improve significantly. Where I'm concerned with them is the number of sacks that they gave up. They were 23rd in sacks, but they weren't terrible on offense. Like I said, defense was amazing. They had some key losses this offseason. Joe Mixon, of course, who's pretty much probably at the end of his career. He was hurt all year, so we'll see where his career ends up. They lost some people up front. Your guy, big dude, Juice Scruggs, moved on. Titus Howard, another offensive lineman, moved on. Those are some of their key losses. I just mentioned Montgomery as one of their key acquisitions. They also got Foster Moreau, tight end, that will help out, and they shored up their offensive line in the face of those losses. They got Wyatt Teller, who's the center, and Evan Brown, who's a guard. So their biggest needs are offensive line, defensive line, running back, safety, and edge. They currently have 12 free agents. They're 20th in cap space, so not a lot to work with there, but certainly they don't have weaknesses on their defensive side, just filling in anyone they lost. They need to really strengthen up that offensive line from everything the stats show moving into next year. Big dude, Texans have the 28th pick in the draft. What move do you have them making?
Ooh. Well, I'll tell you why this is difficult, and I think you laid it out perfectly, Guru. Their defense is as strong as it is. They have a lot of things going on. I guess they have to really look at, do they have enough, or do they want to add to what they have? I know they have to want to get, from what I saw, this younger. I think one person, what's his name, Tommy? Is it Toe Guy? He has another a year extension, which isn't long. You still got Will Anderson back, who is just outstanding. So they could use somebody to pair with Anderson. And and you have Henry Toto, which is in the last year of his rookie contract. So you have some folks that are around. And of course, you got Reed Blankenship to come in to help on in the secondary. So they're in good shape and got the center they needed and everything. Now, I think the reason why the offense and offensive line wins is because of what you mentioned in terms of them being very low in rushing, but also I found out on the win rate on pass blocking. They were 30th out of 32 on the win rate on pass blocking. That's why they gave up those sacks. And of course, very last in win rate in run blocking. So I think that they're going to have to get another offensive lineman ready. I would say the defense try to get some other things later. There's plenty of options, but there's not plenty of options for offensive line. So I'm not sure who's going to be there, but I'm going to say, I know you've heard this name before, Maxi Hanator, I think is the 30th ranked prospect. So he might be there. There's a good chance. I'm looking at him coming in at tackle and getting him ready for the more stable group of linemen. They have the linemen. They made those good free agency signings, but they are stopgap. And I think if they're going to keep their quarterback, C.J. Stroud, it's got to be a little bit more than stopgap because, you know, when they sign those contracts, they sign them, they get a good deal, and then everybody's fighting for an extension. They have to figure out how they can secure the people that they have on the edge to make Stroud feel a little bit better. And Montgomery, you know, especially if they're last in run blocking win rate, you got to get him off the edge. It's got to be someone who can stay on the block on another second. A number of people don't talk about that a running back is only as good as not just the person that they have on the edge, but that person on the edge that can use their hips or get their head on the outside shoulder of the person for just another second, probably gets them another 3-4 yards of carry. So the Texans have got to be able to come in, not like they did in that playoff game, and the offensive line, they have to have one that is ready to take over the game. That playoff game, they lack that. They're going to have to go with it Hanator. I know we're not talking about any other rounds, but, you know, as things fall out, I think there'll be more options for the defense in all the other rounds.
I am in total agreement with you, and thank you for bringing Reed Blankenship into the picture. I forgot that they had acquired him in free agency. That was a big acquisition, so thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, I'm in total agreement with you on where they should go. I think it needs to be offensive line, and you referenced their playoff performance. No meanness whatsoever. They didn't punch back whatsoever against New England, and that surprised me a little bit. Because when you look at Houston, you think of them having a little bit more of an aggressive personality, but I think we get caught up in that because of how their defense flies around. But their offensive line doesn't really maul people. So they need to get mean up front. I agree with you. I just don't think Maxi Hanator is going to be there because he seems to be moving up. It's quite possible. I feel like they will get close to getting him, but I feel like somebody's going to snatch him up. If he's gone, I have them getting either Caleb Lomu from Utah, the offensive tackle, or Monroe Fielding from Georgia. But I'm with you, big dude. If they can get Hanator, that's your guy. That's your guy for sure. So that's what we think about the Texans. Let's move into the Indianapolis Colts. So Indianapolis really felt bad for them this year. They were 8-2 at one point, people. 8-2 entering their bye week. And there was a lot of Super Bowl discussion going on with regards to this team and number one seed throughout the playoffs. And it just really all fell apart once Daniel Jones got hurt. Of course, he tore his Achilles. One of the big things for Indianapolis this year was Phillip Rivers coming back. Wow. It was a downer that they had lost Daniel Jones, to an Achilles. The excitement of Phillip Rivers coming in and seeing what he could do, it sparked the team, and they didn't play bad during Rivers games. Though they lost all of his starts, Indy came close to defeating some of the powerhouses. They almost beat Seattle. They actually had the ball to win that game, and they had the ball to beat Jacksonville. It was either the last week or the next to last week of the season. So they still remain competitive. So for Indianapolis, it's probably a lot of what could have been if Daniel Jones didn't get hurt. But they're definitely trending upwards. Daniel Jones has reinvented himself after essentially being excommunicated from New York and his time with the Giants. He was having a breakout year, and it's just unfortunate that, he lost the remainder of it due to injury. Now, there was a little bit of controversy with him this offseason because he got this transition tag placed on him that none of us was familiar with at the time. But ultimately, they did end up signing him to a 2-year, $100 million deal, which is a little iffy with somebody coming off an Achilles. You just never know how they're going to respond. And what made it also a little bit testy is that Anthony Richardson asked for out before they had even made a decision on Daniel Jones. So now it looks like not only do they have Daniel Jones, it looks like they are trying to hold on to Anthony Richardson as well. So a little bit of controversy in Indianapolis in the offseason, but nothing too bad. One of the big issues for them, unfortunately, is they don't have a first-round pick. They mortgaged that away when they traded for Sauce Gardner, which didn't have any impact on their team at all. And Sauce also ended up missing the remainder of the season after playing a few weeks there with an injury. So after throwing everything they could into the 2025 season, Big Dude, do you think Indy can regain the momentum they had before Daniel Jones's injury, given him able to come back healthy at some point? You think they can pick up where they left off?
Well, it's going to be difficult. Actually, when I look at a team from what I saw, and maybe I didn't read it close enough, it didn't seem like they got enough done in free agency for me. I mean, there were a number of people that spent money and did other things, and I respect them for putting money into a quarterback because you have to do that from, with somebody like Daniel Jones. But, I mean, they lost 2 edge people. And they lost Franklin, their linebacker, who's the heartbeat of the team. I mean, when you give up somebody that's a heartbeat of the team, I would think you would need a heartbeat or something or some facsimile that's coming back. I'm not sure how they do that. They did get, I think, Akeem Davis-Gaither that is supposedly going to change for him, but we don't know how that's going to go. Even with Pittman, now they had their person that was one of their backups who are not the number one wideout, and the question is who will be Alec Pierce. So at the 47th pick, I'm not sure if what they got with Davis-Gaither is going to be enough. I think this is where we start to find out about how the rankings, how there's going to be parity in the prospects rankings. And I'm saying that because you're going to have people available like Jacob Rodriguez and Anthony Hill Jr. So the question is going to be, when you start to take a look at it, and I think we talked about Rodriguez, who is probably, when you talk about athleticism, he has it, made some big plays, and is able to do a whole lot of things, and it's difficult to block. I saw that Anthony Hill, for sure, not only has the athleticism, he seems to have the instinct to be a sideline linebacker that could step in nicely, would still have a lot to learn. I think would be good working with Davis-Gaither. And it's hard to tell what else to do, whether they go get a backup quarterback to see if Richardson doesn't work out. But it doesn't look like that's going to be as much of an issue as you getting somebody in the middle. So I would say I would go with, at the 47th pick, Anthony Hill Jr. as a linebacker from Texas. And, fill in the blanks wherever else they need to fill them in, and to continue to be aggressive, somewhat aggressive. I mean, the cap space isn't that bad, but where they can be with free agency. So that middle linebacker, that person that wears the dot, they're going to have to max that on an outstanding an outstanding young man, that linebacker, like Anthony Hill Jr.?
I initially was also thinking defense for Indy, but I really like their free agent acquisitions. They picked up Arden Key, who's an edge rusher. If you remember his career coming out of LSU, and he was with the Titans. I think that he will thrive in Indianapolis. They also picked up a couple of defensive linemen up front, and they got Jonathan Owens, the safety from Chicago. Simone Biles' husband. It's probably how he's better known. But I like the moves they made on defense. So I'm going to hold. I think they still do need some defensive pieces, but I don't like the sacks that they gave up last year. 25th in sacks. With the run, they were only 17th. And with a dynamic running back, in the backfield, and you're only 17th ranked in rushing, and you're giving up all those sacks, I have to go offensive line again. And I don't know what's going to be left for them. I would love for them to be able to get Max Ionitor, but I think we both agree that he'll be gone. So I'm digging down a little bit deeper. Somebody we haven't mentioned up to this point for the offensive tackle prospects was Blake Miller out of Clemson.
Yes.
6'5", 315, played all 4 years. I like that he played that many games and played that long at Clemson. But I'm going to go to my guy Jennings Dunker here. I'm gonna say that Indy goes Jennings Dunker. He's a Big Ten guy. Stay out there in Big Ten country, mean, big. I think that would be a great pick for them with that pick. And I agree with you. Fill some of these other needs. I even thought about Big Dude. They have some significant draft capital here. Maybe see if they can move up, trade some of these picks and maybe move up either to the end of that second round or, another pick in the third round, because they do have some pieces that they need to fill. And I don't know if they're going to be able to fill them appropriately with those late round picks. I mean, you can certainly get lucky. We've seen some gems, but they have a lot of late picks, and then it's a crapshoot. But I think that they have a little bit of capital that they should be able to move up if they wanted to at least get another third round pick. Nothing worse than another fourth round pick. So that's my thoughts on Indy. Let's move to the Jacksonville Jaguars, the division champions. Great year for them. First year coach. Cohen did a tremendous job after we all clowned him with his Duval press conference. Did a tremendous job with them. He got the best out of Trevor Lawrence. Finally, somebody got the best out of Sunshine. I was happy to see that. He did a good job with that entire roster, because one of the things about Jacksonville is they've had a good young roster, but they just did not have the coach to put it together. And he did a good job, because if you think about it, for the last few years, Jacksonville has been drafting high. So it's not like they didn't have prospects, but no one was ever really able to get it all to click. And you often wonder what happens with them if Travis Hunter doesn't get hurt. I mean, because you got to figure they barely lost their wild card game against Buffalo. Travis Hunter being in that game gives them another weapon, and perhaps that makes the difference. So nonetheless, they were able to win the division. They fought off Houston at the end, who got really hot after starting off strong. But while their season ended in a disappointing way against Buffalo, there's definitely reason for optimism in Jacksonville. I think they have a good nucleus to have a really successful future. I think they'll be one of the top teams in the AFC again next year. Really, we just need to see if can they repeat what they did this past year, because I think they surprised a lot of people, and they won a lot of games convincingly. That's the one thing that people may be ignoring about their season. They put teams away. So, we know that they can be high powered on offense. Their defense, they were really good against the run, but not so much the pass. They were the number one ranked running defense, and they did not get a lot of sacks. So taking that into account, another team that doesn't have any first round picks, they don't need a lot. Just say they, won their division. They were the third seed in the AFC. They don't need a lot. They had some really good offseason acquisitions. They got Greg Newsome, the veteran cornerback. They got Chris Rodriguez to replace Travis Etienne. And they got DJ Dallas, who, if you recall, he's always been a productive special teams player in returning kicks. So some good additions. They also added a couple of cornerbacks and a defensive lineman to kind of help with that defense there. But with no pick in the first round, what do you have the Jags doing with that 56th pick in the second round?
Well, and I almost feel the same way. I guess I'm affected by this whole thing at middle linebacker. It was a devastating loss for them to lose Devin Lloyd. Devin Lloyd is just the prize of whatever you want to call him. I mean, he's a big play. He's a linebacker who's also a big play guy and also had the defense going, especially when they were going well. But he has moved on. 56 is a tough pick, so they could move up. Again, as you mentioned, the trade in the second round. But the question would be is higher in the second round. The question, I guess, would be is does anything supersede the linebackers? I have to also look at their corners and all those folks. They're looking pretty good. They re-signed Dennis Gardeck as their corner. And then on the interior defensive line, Eric Armstead is, used to play for San Francisco. He's 32. He may be moved after the infamous January 1st date so they can save some money. So to me, it was between getting somebody, and I don't know if he would be there at 56, Caleb Banks, or going back to this time, for the most part, Anthony Hill again. Without Devin Lloyd, they have to come up with somebody else. And again, they're at 56. So if he's not there, Anthony Hill, which he might not be because of what we just saw, the 47th pick, I'm going to go with Jacob Rodriguez at middle linebacker. They have to get a middle linebacker and take a chance on someone that and give him an opportunity to be the leader that he needs to be. And it may be a little harder. We don't know how he's going to be in coverage. But it was between him and Anthony Hill and Banks, although I think they're going to be okay, and they may not have to get anybody at 56. So that's about where I'm going to go. The offensive line, we always could get a few other folks, and it sounds like the running backs are okay. Although, to tell you the truth, from what I saw, the Jaguars nation is not too happy about necessarily relying on Chris Rodriguez from the things that I was able to see. But I think they're going to be okay because they need a steady running back that protects the football and everything else. I think also Jadarian Price was something that people considered as well. I think they're good with Rodriguez. So I am going to go with Rodriguez, Jacob Rodriguez, not Christopher Rodriguez, Jacob Rodriguez at middle linebacker. And if Hill's there, I would take Hill over Rodriguez.
We are so lock in step with this one. I have at the 56th pick, Jacob Rodriguez. However, I don't think he's going to be there. For some reason, I feel like he might not be there. And I have a guy, big dude, that we have not discussed, that I've been super high on him since he was a freshman. And now it's time. Harold Perkins, the linebacker from LSU. Why he's not ranked higher is beyond me. But his athletic profile jumps off the screen if you're watching him play. He's legitimate pass rusher. He put up respectable numbers in the SEC while he was there. I mean, there's nothing not to love about this guy. In fact, if you would have talked to me in the beginning of the year, I probably would have had him as the number one rated linebacker. But most analysts are giving him a second round grade prospect, so he'll probably be there because I haven't heard his name come up once in any draft discussion in any outlet. Now, one of the problems with Perkins is where does he play? because he didn't really have a base position with LSU. And that may have been why he got lost a little bit in the linebacker shuffle in terms of draft analysis. So check this out. He played 253 snaps on the defensive line as an edge rusher last year. He played 221 snaps in the box as an inside linebacker and 231 snaps in the slot, mainly as an overhang defender, but not a traditional cornerback. So he's versatile as hell. But where do you put him? And I remember the first time I saw him as a freshman, he looked like a cornerback playing defensive end, even though he was a linebacker. So he's got this weird skill set. And I'm thinking maybe, if we see him this way and that's where he played, maybe a lot of teams just don't know where he would go. And that's why he's not listed as a high prospect. But I'm going to say Harold Perkins only if Jacob Rodriguez isn't available.
Wow, man, that's some diverse skill sets, man. I haven't heard that from any of the linebackers. I mean, they didn't even say that about Hill. They mentioned some other things about him, but that especially your eye test for him is probably the best one I've heard so far for one of the prospects as a linebacker or as whoever.
I love this kid, and I don't understand why he has fallen so far off the radar. In any case, let's wrap up our AFC South with the Tennessee Titans. Tennessee certainly needs a lot. They've drafted high the last few years, but they're building a lot of nice young talent. Certainly they got their quarterback last year. I would say just off of his rookie season, I think that they'll be okay at quarterback. Tennessee, one of the things I questioned about that franchise, I questioned that Brian Callahan hire to begin with, and then you didn't even let him make it out of October before you fired him. So I think a lot of people were looking at Tennessee like, what's going on with them? And you could look back even further. Why did you fire Mike Vrabel? Because, they weren't in the playoffs a year or two. Like, come on. So I would question their management and leadership, but I know they've made some changes in the front office. So I think they've probably moved in a positive direction. Fortunately for the Titans, their death in 2025 was quick and painless. And like I said, Brian Callahan was fired in October. It was still 80 degrees down in Nashville. My man didn't even make it until the cold weather. Then his team was sitting at 1-5, a season after they had just had the number one overall pick in the draft. But we know that you get the number one overall pick doesn't mean that you all of a sudden go to the Super Bowl. Usually you have a lot of other pieces that need to be filled, and that's the case with the Titans. I feel like I want to go back to Callahan. I feel like it was almost a panic hire because I think they kind of after the fact realized they made a mistake firing Mike Vrabel and didn't know what to do. And I don't think there was any point in time where they thought Callahan was going to really be the future of Tennessee. And as someone who was down there during that time period, I didn't get the sense that he was going to be there long. I definitely thought he would have survived October, but I didn't think he would be there long term. But in any case, Cam Ward started off slow, but I thought he had a pretty good rookie season for a rookie quarterback. And I am an advocate of if you're picking somebody like Cam Ward, who you're identifying as your franchise quarterback right off the jump, let him play. Get the kinks out. I'm a big proponent of the Peyton Manning approach, right? Everyone remember Peyton Manning's rookie year. He led in rookie interceptions all time for the longest. But you know what? He got the kinks out. You need to get used to game speed. You just need to get used to the speed of the game. And I'm glad that Cam Ward got thrown into the fire, even though it was painful to watch some weeks. I'm glad that he got that experience, and I think not only will he be better off, but the Titans will be better off moving forward. I don't know about their coaching hire, Robert Saleh. I'm a big Robert Saleh guy, but I think he's more of a coordinator. I'm rooting for him. I hope that he can get the job done because I really like him as a coach. I like his energy. And, I like that style of coaching. He's aggressive. And I think that he's what the Titans need. And I hope that it can work out with him as the head guy in charge instead of being defensive coordinator. So one thing is their defense is going to be mean at some point. But the Titans will be moving into a new stadium, which is very impressive. They have a lot of young pieces. They're going to continue to get young pieces with these draft picks. One of the things about the Titans is they are number one in cap space, $64 million large. So they can do some damage. They can do some serious damage with that cap in their draft picks. So on offense, they're 30th, almost last against the pass, almost last in passing, last in rushing. Defense, they weren't bad on defense, believe it or not, but still low ranked, 21st total defense, 23rd against the pass, decent against the run, 16th, but they didn't get a lot of turnovers. They were 29th in interceptions, 17th in fumbles recovered. So still a lot of pieces to fill, but they did pick up Wan'Dale Robinson, who's a decent wide receiver. He's a veteran, so he can do some things for you. They picked up a couple of cornerbacks, defensive linemen, and they got Jermaine Johnson from the Jets, the edge rusher. That'll help in their pass defense. But they also lost Arden Key, who I mentioned earlier, and T'Vondre Sweat. But plenty to work with, plenty of draft picks, plenty of cap space, and they have the number 4 pick. And Big Dude and I were talking earlier. Everybody wants to have the top draft picks, but man, when you need multiple things, it's hard because it's almost like you're afraid to make a mistake. So, Big Dude, what do the Titans do with the 4th pick in the draft?
It looks like the Saleh, as a defensive coach, we know is going to be aggressive. He has to understand that at some point, though, it's really going to be about explosive plays. So number one, there needs to be a focus on how they stretch the field and how they can open up opportunities for people. The biggest argument that we see on almost all of the different venues that we've checked into is whether they take Jeremiah Love. There were, of course, a number of people that said, hey, this is what we need to add to the offense. But I guess the question is their running back, Tony Pollard, is he enough? It used to be that they had, back in the day, you get unstoppable combination of running backs, but people don't really run their teams like that anymore. So I think that basically, as difficult as it is, I think you're going to have to pass up for sure on Jeremiah Love. He's probably the just about the best available. You're not going to get a probably better running back in the draft, but if you're drafting for need and you have the defense that the Titans are going to have and looking for coming off the edge, I think you have to pick, if he's there, and I think he will be, I think you have to pick David Bailey at number 4 to give you a chance at number 35 to get still a pretty solid wideout at number 35. So I think that David Bailey from Texas Tech, and I know they have several other needs, and there's several other pairings. There's still somebody at 35 like a Denzel Boston that can pair with Wan'Dale Robinson. However, I 4 was a difficult to pass up. They also had a center that they cut. I understand the Bills have him now, Lloyd Cushenberry. They probably could get somebody like that later on in the draft that's a solid center. You mentioned some other folks. So without getting into all the other rounds, I would say Bailey at at number 4, and Denzel Boston at number 35.
Yeah, I was so torn with Tennessee. I don't disagree with you, but boy, it's tempting to get a wide receiver there. But thinking of who Robert Saleh is, he's a defensive mind. We know defense typically wins. Tennessee moved the ball pretty well last year for a team without explosive weapons. I mean, they were in a few games that they could have won. And, you have a rookie quarterback trying to navigate these things. So it wasn't – the stats read horrible, but it wasn't horrible. But I am so torn with them what to do. I don't know if – I think this is where I land. I love the wide receivers. I need to say that first in this draft. And it's a deep wide receiver draft. I don't think I love the wide receivers enough to pick one at the 4th pick.
No.
You know what I'm saying? As much as I love Tate and Lemon and Boston and all those guys, you got to go defense. I'm with you. I'm going to say Keldrick Falk or David Bailey. I think David Bailey is the sexy choice right now. I think he's probably the top edge right now if we're looking at where they're ranking them. Either one of those guys, they certainly will both be available. I think I'm going to go David Bailey. I'm going to go with you with David Bailey on that one and get your other needs later. You're picking again the beginning of the 2nd round. There'll be plenty of wide receivers there. There'll be plenty of wide. I just don't think I want to pay wide receiver money for the 4th pick when there's going to be plenty of wide receivers left. And the problem you're going to have too with a wide receiver, I mean, you may have this with whoever you pick, but if you pick one of those guys, the chances of you being able to keep them and get everything else you need in terms of salary stuff, that's going to be tough. But your defense, you can build around your defense easier than you can around, a top wide receiver, even though they're just as important.
Agreed.
So I think that's where I stand with that. So that is it for our AFC South. We are going to be wrapping up, believe it or not, with the AFC West. I feel like we got through this pretty quickly, but then we can really dig into some of these top prospects and, who do we think our top prospects are, and then share with you all, our mock draft. So looking forward to that. Continue to view and follow us on all the major streaming services. And until next time, see ya later.
Take care, y'all.